Dear viewers, welcome to our channel. Subscribe to receive more stories every day. The echoes of Jonathan's voice still lingered in Emma's ears as she walked out of the house with nothing but a single suitcase and her swollen belly. The humiliation burned hotter than the cold wind that whipped through the empty streets. His final words, "You're a failure, Emma. You failed me, you failed yourself, and you'll fail that baby," played over and over in her mind like a cruel refrain. Emma had always known Jonathan could be harsh, but she never imagined he would go so far. Her once loving husband had turned bitter, his impatience with her dreams morphing into resentment. Her music, which had once been their shared passion, became the wedge that drove them apart. He'd once believed in her, or at least pretended to. Now, she was nothing more than a disappointment to him. She walked until her feet blistered, clutching the only money she had left, a few crumpled bills and coins she had saved from teaching music lessons. A dingy motel with flickering neon lights became her refuge. Emma stared at the peeling wallpaper in the small room, wondering how her life had unraveled so quickly. Her guitar, the only possession she had brought with her, leaned against the wall, a silent witness to her pain. It had been her source of joy and hope, a way to escape the mundane and express her soul. But now, even its presence felt like a mockery of her failure. The days turned into weeks. With nowhere else to go, Emma performed on street corners, pouring her heart into every note while her belly grew larger. Her voice was raw, stripped of pretense, and filled with a kind of emotion that could only come from someone who had been broken. Some passers-by dropped coins into her open guitar case, but most simply walked by without a glance. One rainy afternoon, Emma stood beneath a crumbling overpass, singing to no one in particular. Her voice, a haunting melody of despair and hope intertwined, echoed through the damp space. A young girl stopped and stared, clutching her mother's hand. The mother smiled softly and handed Emma a few bills. "You have a beautiful voice," she said. "Don't give up." The words struck Emma harder than she expected. For months, she had been teetering on the edge of giving up. But something about the kindness in the woman's voice made her feel seen, if only for a moment. As her belly grew heavier, Emma found herself struggling more each day. The baby's arrival loomed closer, and the fear of raising a child alone gnawed at her constantly. But the music never left her. Even on her worst days, when her voice cracked from exhaustion and tears, she sang. Then came the day her life changed forever. Emma had taken to singing at the entrance of the subway during rush hour, hoping to catch the attention of hurried commuters. It was there that a stranger with a camera stopped to listen. He was an older man, graying at the temples, with a kind face. "Do you mind if I record you?" he asked. Emma hesitated. "Why? Your voice. It's incredible," he said. "People need to hear this." Too tired to argue and too desperate to care, Emma nodded. The man propped his phone against a nearby pole and recorded as she performed a stripped-down version of a song she had written about loss and resilience. "Thank you," he said when she finished. "What's your name?" "Emma," she replied, not expecting anything to come of it. A week later, Emma was walking out of a thrift store with a bag of baby clothes when her phone buzzed. A rare occurrence since Jonathan had cut her off financially. The screen displayed a flurry of notifications. Confused, she clicked on one and was directed to a video on a social media platform. It was her. The video of her subway performance had gone viral. In the clip, her voice soared, raw and powerful, capturing the hearts of thousands. Comments flooded the screen. "This is the voice of someone who's lived through it all. Who is she? Where can I hear more? I felt this in my soul." Emma stared at the screen, her hands trembling. Her voice, the very thing Jonathan had dismissed as a waste of time, was now reaching people far beyond the dingy corners of her city. Soon offers started pouring in. Local radio stations wanted interviews. Small venues asked her to perform. But Emma's reality remained grounded. She was still living in the cramped motel room, her baby due any day. One day, she received a message from a woman named Olivia, a music producer who had seen the viral video. "Your voice is extraordinary," Olivia wrote. "I'd love to help you record your songs professionally. Call me if you're interested. Emma clutched the phone tightly. For the first time in months, she felt something unfamiliar bloom in her chest, hope. When her baby girl Lily was born a few weeks later, Emma felt an overwhelming sense of purpose. She looked into her daughter's wide, curious eyes and promised to give her a life filled with love and possibility. With Olivia's help, Emma recorded her first single in a makeshift studio. The song, titled Worth Fighting For, was a tribute to the struggles she had endured and the strength she had found. The response was immediate. The song climbed local charts, spreading like wildfire. Emma's story, a pregnant woman abandoned by her husband who rose from the ashes, captivated listeners. Her voice became a beacon of resilience, resonating with people who had faced their own hardships. As she held Lily close one evening, Emma realized that her journey was just beginning. She had no idea how far her voice would take her, but for the first time, she believed in herself. Little did she know, her rise to fame would soon cross paths with the man who had cast her aside. Emma's rise wasn't meteoric. It was built brick by brick, note by note, each performance cementing her reputation as a raw, authentic artist. Her first single, Worth Fighting For, became a local anthem, but it wasn't just the song that captivated people. It was her story. The media latched onto her narrative. A pregnant woman, abandoned and penniless, singing her heart out on the streets to survive. Her resilience and vulnerability struck a chord with audiences everywhere. Soon, Emma found herself performing on local radio stations, then regional TV shows, her voice echoing into homes and hearts far beyond her small corner of the city. Jonathan sat at his desk in his downtown office, the glow of his computer screen casting shadows across his face. His career had been steady, but the shine of success was beginning to dull. Deals were slipping through his fingers, and his confidence was wearing thin. He was too proud to admit it, but Emma's absence had left a void he hadn't anticipated. Jonathan told himself he didn't need her, that she had been an anchor dragging him down. But late at night, when the silence was too loud to ignore, he wondered if he had made a mistake. He had tried dating again, but no one compared to Emma's quiet determination, her fierce belief in her dreams. One evening, as he flipped through channels aimlessly, his hand froze on the remote. The television screen showed a familiar face, one he hadn't seen in over a year. It was Emma. She was seated on a plush couch in a brightly lit studio, her smile radiant, her voice steady as she answered the host's questions. "Emma, your song Worth Fighting For has touched so many lives. Can you tell us what inspired it?" the host asked. Emma's smile faltered for a moment, but she quickly recovered. "The song came from a very personal place," she said. "I wrote it during one of the darkest times of my life. I was pregnant, homeless, and trying to figure out how to move forward after losing everything." Jonathan's chest tightened. He reached for the remote to change the channel, but his hand hovered, paralyzed by her words. The host leaned in. "That must have been incredibly difficult. How did you find the strength to keep going?" Emma glanced down at her hands, then back at the camera. "My daughter gave me that strength. I wanted her to know that no matter how hard life gets, you can rise above it. And I wanted to prove to myself that I was more than what someone else thought of me." Jonathan felt the blow like a punch to the gut. He knew she was talking about him. Emma's career took off in ways she never imagined. Her second single, Through the Storm, debuted on national charts, solidifying her as a breakout artist. Invitations to perform at larger venues poured in, and she soon found herself on the stages of sold-out theaters. Through it all, Emma remained grounded. Every note she sang was for Lily, who became her constant companion backstage. "You're my biggest fan, aren't you?" Emma would say, kissing her daughter's curly head. The turning point came when a prominent music awards show nominated Worth Fighting For for Best New Artist Song of the Year. The recognition brought Emma into the national spotlight, and her story gained even more traction. Producers wanted documentaries about her journey. Talk shows clamored for interviews. But Emma chose her appearances carefully, always emphasizing the importance of resilience and self-worth. For Jonathan, The sight of Emma everywhere he turned became unbearable. Her voice played in grocery stores, her face smiled from magazine covers, and her name dominated conversations at work. At first he tried to brush it off. Good for her, he told himself with a forced laugh. She got lucky. But as her success grew, so did the gnawing realization that he had underestimated her. Jonathan's career was faltering. His business was losing clients to younger, hungrier competitors, and his personal life was a mess. He spent nights alone in his apartment, scrolling through social media, unable to escape the barrage of posts about Emma. One evening, curiosity got the better of him. He typed her name into the search bar and found an article titled "From Homeless to Headliner: The Inspiring Story of Emma Hart." The article recounted her journey in painful detail, how she had sung on street corners to survive, how a viral video had catapulted her into the spotlight, and how she had done it all while raising a child on her own. His child. Jonathan stared at the words, the reality of what he had lost hitting him like a tidal wave. Emma was preparing for her biggest performance yet, a live televised concert that would be broadcast nationwide. It was a culmination of her journey, a celebration of everything she had achieved. As she adjusted her microphone backstage, she felt a strange mix of excitement and nerves. She didn't expect to see Jonathan in the audience. He had managed to secure a ticket through a mutual acquaintance, desperate to see her in person. When the lights dimmed and Emma stepped onto the stage, Jonathan felt a pang of regret so sharp it left him breathless. Her voice filled the auditorium, raw and powerful, the very sound that had once annoyed him now moving him to tears. She sang a new song, one she hadn't released yet. The lyrics told the story of a woman abandoned but unbroken, a mother fighting for her child, an artist finding her voice despite the odds. As the final notes faded, the crowd erupted in applause, but Emma's eyes scanned the audience and locked onto Jonathan's. For a moment time stood still. She gave him a small, knowing smile, one filled with neither anger nor forgiveness, but something in between. It was a reminder of the woman he had underestimated, the woman who had become a star without him. The applause echoed through the grand hall as Emma stood center stage, the spotlight bathing her in a warm glow. The audience was on their feet, cheering and clapping, many with tears in their eyes after her heartfelt performance. But as Emma looked out into the crowd, her eyes kept drifting back to Jonathan, sitting stiffly in the middle row. He hadn't clapped. Her gaze lingered for only a moment before she turned and gave a final bow. Her focus was on the audience that mattered, the people who had supported her, believed in her, and seen her for who she truly was. Backstage was a whirlwind of activity, with journalists lining up for interviews and well-wishers flooding her dressing room with flowers and congratulations. Lily, clutching a stuffed bunny, sat on the couch, giggling as a makeup artist painted tiny stars on her cheeks. Emma was basking in the energy of the evening when her manager, Olivia, entered the room with a hesitant expression. "There's someone here to see you," Olivia said, her tone cautious. Emma didn't need to ask who. She could feel his presence, the weight of it, like a shadow creeping into her brightly lit sanctuary. "I don't think that's a good idea," she replied, her voice steady but cold. "He said he'll wait as long as it takes," Olivia added. Emma sighed, her resolve firm. Let him wait. And Jonathan did. Hours later, when the hall had emptied and the crew was packing up, Emma finally stepped into the quiet lobby. Jonathan was seated in a corner, his hands clasped tightly in his lap. He looked older, thinner, as if the years had taken more from him than time had any right to. When he saw her, he stood abruptly, his eyes wide with a mix of desperation and guilt. "Emma," he started, his voice cracking. "What do you want, Jonathan?" she asked, her tone sharp but not cruel. He faltered, struggling to find the words. "I saw you tonight. You were incredible." Emma crossed her arms, her expression unreadable. "Thank you. Is that all?" Jonathan ran a hand through his hair, clearly frustrated. "Oh, Emma, I was wrong. About everything. About you, about your dreams, about us." She let out a bitter laugh. "It took you this long to figure that out?" He flinched but pressed on. I was scared back then. Scared of failing, scared of not being enough. And I took it out on you. I thought your music was a distraction, that it was holding us back. But I was wrong. It wasn't you holding me back, it was me. Emma's eyes softened for a brief moment before the memory of her struggles hardened them again. Do you know what it was like, Jonathan? Being pregnant and homeless. Singing on the streets just to feed myself. To prepare for a baby that I had to raise alone. You didn't just leave me. You abandoned our child. Jonathan's face crumpled. No. And I'll never forgive myself for that. I've thought about you every day since you left. I see Lily. She looks so much like you. I want to be part of her life. Emma's jaw tightened. You had your chance, Jonathan. And you threw it away. Jonathan stepped closer, his voice pleading. Emma, I'm not asking for forgiveness. I need you to know how proud I am of you. Of what you've accomplished. You proved me wrong in every possible way. Emma studied him for a long moment. Her heart conflicted. Part of her had longed to hear those words for years. But another part of her, the part that had carried her through the darkest times, knew she didn't need his approval. Jonathan, she said finally, her voice calm but resolute. My success isn't about proving you wrong. It's about proving to myself that I could rise above the pain you caused. And I did. Lily and I built a life without you. And we're stronger for it. Jonathan nodded, tears in his eyes. I understand. But if there's any way I can make it up to you, please let me try. Emma tilted her head. A small, sad smile playing on her lips. There's nothing you can do, Jonathan. Past is done. But if you really want to make amends, be better. Be the man you weren't for me, for someone else. That's all I'll say. With that, she turned and walked away, leaving Jonathan standing alone in the empty lobby. The next morning, the headlines were everywhere. Emma Hart's emotional performance leaves fans in tears. From homeless to headliner. The unstoppable journey of Emma Hart. As Emma sipped her coffee, Lily playing on the floor beside her, she felt a sense of peace she hadn't known in years. Her life was far from perfect, but it was hers, and she had built it with her own 2 hands. Jonathan, meanwhile, sat in his dimly lit apartment, staring at the program from her concert. Her words echoed in his mind, a constant reminder of what he had lost, and what he could never get back. He picked up his phone and typed out a message to an old friend. I need to change, he wrote. Can you help me? Months later, Emma stood backstage at a charity gala, preparing to perform a new song. It was a fundraiser for single mothers, and she was proud to lend her voice to a cause so close to her heart. As she strummed the opening chords, she thought about her journey, the pain, the struggles, and the triumphs. Her voice soared, filling the room with a melody that spoke of hope and resilience. Somewhere, Jonathan watched from afar, knowing he had been the catalyst for her strength but also the architect of his own regret. Emma's voice carried on, not just a song but a legacy, one that belonged to her, to Lily, and to the countless others who found strength in her story. Dear viewers, thank you for watching. If you like this story, please subscribe to our channel to receive more stories every day. Share with us what you think of this story.